can I welcome you to the Cabinet on Monday the 24th of January. It's just past 2 o'clock. I've got the first item on the agenda is apologies for absence, and I know that Margaret Wilkinson is having some difficulty getting in, but hopefully she'll join us shortly. The second item on the agenda is the minutes of the last meeting. Can I have your approval to agree them, please? Can I formally move?
And I'll formally second, Leader.
Thank you. And there's happy to move on. Good. The next item is to receive any declarations of interest, if there are any. I don't believe that there are. No. Okay. In that case, we'll go to the references, and we have a plethora of them. The first one is agenda item 4, which is a reference from the Governance and Audit Committee of the 13th of December. It relates to the Audit General for Wales review of Town Centre Regeneration Wales. The committee had a presentation. Just for the background, the Auditor General's review of Town Centre Regeneration in Wales was undertaken between October and May 2020 and May 2021, and the findings were published in September 2021. That report was appended as Appendix A, and that concluded that the town centres are in the heart of Welsh life and can be vibrant and sustainable places, but addressing the many challenges they face requires brave decisions and ambitious leadership. The report did make 6 recommendations, and they're covered in the report, in the covering report, covering from R1 to R6. In response to the findings, the Managing Director and Head of Regeneration and Planning had developed an action plan that would be progressed by the Council. There were comments in relation to on Barry and the work ongoing and the work still required, and in reply that, in fairness, it was accepted that so there's still work to be carried out. In terms of there was also a comment in terms of funding and the bid made to the UK government on the Levelling Up Fund and the Shared Prosperity Fund, as well as funding made available Welsh Government. In addition, the consultants had recently employed further development to the master plan in Barry. And again, the Head of Regeneration stated that there was a recognition in the report that the town centres could no longer stay as they were, as mainly retail areas, so they would become mixed-use areas. There was a further question and observations made and queried about the engagement taking place with landlords. Again, it was suggested that the council was working with landlords to try and ensure that their properties were not empty on a long-term basis, and the council held a record of the properties so that it was aware of the action that was needed. So if landlords were not cooperative, then indeed there were powers for the council could employ. There's one, I noticed there's one typo, and that's on the last paragraph, about 3/4 of the way down. It talks about that the Head of Regeneration and Planning stated that percentage of the revenue stream was needed for staff and administration costs. It should be so, just for that. But in essence, what the findings of the Audit General, the Audit Wales review of the town centres was endorsed by the Governance and Audit Committee, and they asked for their comments to be sent to us for our endorsement. And indeed, I have no hesitation in endorsing the findings of the audit and the work that is currently underway. So basically, I think that covers that element of it. But obviously, there are some issues in terms of we can't continue as we are. We have to develop in different ways. And obviously, the issue in terms of empty properties was also addressed, which I think is fair comment, but as it says in the report, there is an action plan which is currently being undertaken. So can I move that we thank the Governance and Audit Committee for their responses, and we indeed endorse their comments and endorse the comments from the Auditor General for Wales. So I don't know if anybody's got any comments. Liz, would you like to make any comments?
Yes, thank you, Leader. I think an interesting report. There was also an interesting webinar as well that I attended, but all on top of that, interesting comments and constructive comments from members when they were discussed. I think it's fair to say that, I mean, we are very fortunate that we have 5, could say 6, very diverse town centres, each with their strengths, each with their challenges. And with that, it means that we have to take a diversified approach to working with them. Also, the types of funding that we have available tend to have different criteria attached to them, so that we have to match the funding available to the challenges that our town centres are facing, and then within that try and work with the town centres themselves, with local town councils to develop proposals for those. And I said, I think that we are moving forward after a couple of quite troublesome years where we've worked very increasingly closely with our local traders. Empty shops in some areas are an issue, and I know that the work on the one empty shop front in Barry was with the design of a toy shop on the front of it, was very widely praised before Christmas, and that there are more things like that to actually help the town centres to look better. And of course the discussions we've been having around Art Central, particularly in Barry, to look at how we can build vibrancy and vitality into the centre of the town is also very important. So I've got no hesitation in seconding your endorsement of the report.
Thank you very much. And it would be remiss of me not to mention the fact that actually it was sent to the Governance and Audit Committee from Environmental Regeneration Scrutiny Committee, who had also addressed the issues and clearly had also endorsed the findings of the Auditor General. So it's also, so perhaps I should say thanks to both of those committees for the amount of work they did in looking at it. Okay, you happy to move on? Yes, good. The next item is item 5, and again it's a reference from the Governance and Audit Committee, and again this came from Corporate Performance and Resources to it. It's in relation to the Audit Wales Financial Sustainability Assessment of the Vilgo Morgan Council. As I said, it was a reference which was taken from Corporate Performance. The report concluded that the Vilgo Morgan Council was well placed to maintain its financial resilience with a healthy level of reserves and sustainable plans for their use. There were key findings from the assessment, and they are covered within the report. And there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 points in the report itself, so I won't be reading those out. But obviously the report did identify one proposal for improvement, and that was to, given the anticipated funding gaps in 22-23 and 23-24, the Council needs to determine how it will meet those gaps, including the extent to which savings will contribute to that. And I think that's very pertinent, particularly in bearing in mind that we're going through the budget process at the moment. And as we all know, when we looked at our cost pressures, they were in excess of £29 million. When you took into account pay and things that went with it, but clearly it was 26 million that was covered within the report itself. And clearly we're still going on with that, but I think it's a pertinent reminder. But the point about that was the ongoing funding gap would be considered as part of the budget process, as I said. So what I think is pertinent. Progress will obviously be monitored by Audit Wales as part of the annual work audit. And most recently in September, Audit had published a further national summary report called Financial Summary of Local Government COVID-19 Impacts, Recovery and Future Challenges, and clearly that has an impact on what we're looking forward in the future, and indeed the budget process. So basically the Cabinet noted the comments of the report of the National and Local Government Sustainable Report, including the key findings, and indeed they endorsed it and asked it to come to Cabinet for consideration, which is why it's here today. So I'm happy to endorse the comments they made, and obviously look at those proposals from Audit when we're considering the budget in the months to come. And anybody got any comments to make in relation to this one? Nope. So is that seconded, please? Can I formally move?
And formally seconded.
Thank you very much. In that case, I will go on to agenda item 6, and can I welcome Margaret? I know you had some connection difficulties, so welcome. Just for the record, Margaret, none of us received any declarations of interest, and just for the record, do you have any? You don't. Okay, that's good. Just for the record. The next item is item 6, which is a reference again from the Governance and Audit Committee, and it's in relation to a draft counter fraud strategy and framework of 2021 to 2024. Indeed, one of the core functions of the Governance and Audit Committee was to consider the effectiveness of the Council's risk management arrangements, the control environment and associated anti-fraud corruption policies. The Council's counter-fraud strategy and framework was an integral part to that, and therefore at Appendix A to that report was updated the counter-fraud strategy and framework for 21-24, which did consider the findings of the Raising Our Game and Tackling Fraud Wales report. So the counter-fraud report, strategy and framework outlined the strategy, identified fraud risks, and included a 3-year action plan. Key policies such as counter-fraud, bribery and corruption policy, anti-money laundering policy, and anti-tax evasion policy would be updated. And a speak outline, which is quite interesting, was due to be launched in mid-December, and I think that was the case, which could be accessed via telephone, email, or staff to assist in the reporting of potential fraud. It is quite comprehensive, and the fact that we are still carrying out these policies and we are looking at our risks, and clearly we've looked at our risk register in the last couple of meetings too. But in essence, the Governance and Audit Committee, they noted the draft counter framework, and they asked it to come to us for consideration, which I think we would. It's at Appendix A to their report, and I think it is pertinent that we thank them for the work, but we actually, as a Cabinet, endorse the counter fraud strategy and framework report today. Not just note it, I think we should endorse it. If anybody's got any comments to make in relation to that. No? Yep. Good.
Except to formally second your endorsement.
Thank you very much. The next item is item 8, which is a reference on corporate performance and resources, and it's in relation to the initial capital programme proposals. As we all know, the reference from Cabinet was made on the 22nd of November. We were still at a stage where we weren't sure.
Have we missed out an agenda item?
Have we?
We go to 7, I believe, in 7.
Do you have to do corporate safeguarding?
In that case, I apologise. I think we might have. We have indeed.
You can ignore Ben.
I'm terribly sorry. We did. It's a single page one. Thank you. Thank you. This is a reference from Homes and Safe Communities on the 16th of December. It's the Corporate Safeguarding Midterm Report. It was a reference again from Cabinet on the 22nd of November, so I had that bit right. The Council did has a corporate response to ensure effective safeguarding arrangements, and that they were in place for children and adults who require specific Council services, and the report updated members on the effectiveness of those arrangements and developments over the last period. The work of the Corporate Safeguarding Group focused on the strategic overview for safeguarding across the Council, and had met regularly since April 2021, and a number of priorities had been considered. It was considered that good practice was being shared, both internally from work within the Vale, but also regionally in terms of the work of the Regional Safeguarding Board, which is good. There have been contact with the New Wales-wide DBS representative who shared the GSG areas where they could support councils in terms of DBS, barring and referrals and safer recruitment. We have a corporate safeguarding work plan, and the corporate safeguard group was involved in developing that, and that data and safeguarding training was in place. A full year report will be provided in due course. There were some comments from one of the elected members, and they raised issues in relation to members not receiving a DBS as part of their role, unless they individually chose to do so. And I'm not sure if that's actually currently the case. It was a situation that the head of Building Services explained that DBS checks were constrained by legislation and the statutory framework, and it was applied to things like such as working alone with children, etc., but working alone with vulnerable people. He says he was going to seek further clarification on the issue, which I think we could discuss later, as well as sharing with members the statutory basis on which DBS checks were made in order to help progress progress this area of concern. They actually noted it, but they did have this issue about the DBS. Now, I recall not this cycle, the cycle before of a council, when we considered, and in fact I pushed it at council that if members wanted to have a DBS, that they should, because at one time we were having other checks. Some people took it up, but since then it's been considered that DBS checks are probably not required for members, because they are not put in those positions. Now, I know that Councillor Ben Gray has got an issue in terms of this, because I know he's got a background in it and he's our safeguarding champion. So I'm going to bring him in to the debate, please.
Yeah, thank you, Neil and Leader. And I think it's important to know that there are existing standards and advice from WLGA and others, and clearly, whatever standards there are after May's elections, all the new councillors would therefore, as part of their training and processes, be brought up to date with where we are. I wonder if it might be okay just to bring Lance Carver into this conversation, as his involvement with the Regional Safeguarding Board and chairing the corporate safeguarding group. I think he may just be able to draw a line under it. I feel that the topic of councillors has been covered previously, and I think we're in a strong enough position to just note the idea and say that we're on top of current advice. But perhaps, Lance, you could just highlight some things.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's clear that we don't need it. But Lance, do you want to come in, please?
Yeah, it was just to say that there is guidance that was specifically set out for school governors and elected councillor roles. I think one of the pieces of work that I'll do following this recommendation is to get the corporate safeguarding group to do a review and make sure that all of those reviews have happened as they should have done.
Okay, all right, good. Ben, do you want to come back?
Just perhaps we can just in how we note this, note the fact that the corporate safeguarding group will look at this further, but as we understand it, we're currently compliant with all the existing guidelines and suggestions.
Indeed, we are. It was an issue, as I say. It was 10 years ago, probably, not longer. When we did look at it, and I know that some members took up the opportunity of having a DBS check, but subsequent to that, it was considered. I think we considered it either at the beginning of this cycle or the term before. Was that we looked at it and thought that it wasn't necessary on the basis that councillors weren't in those positions of being alone with vulnerable individuals, and therefore it wasn't necessary. In the same way as governors won't need to be DBS checked too. But if we can double check, that's fine. But at this stage, I think we note their comments of the Homes and Safe Communities Committee, and give an assurance that we don't believe that DBSs are required. But should there be a change in the legislation, which I don't think there has been, we will obviously chase that up. I think that probably covers it. If you're happy with that, Ben.
Yeah, that seems reasonable.
Okay. Thank you, Lance. Thank you for that. And now we will go to the one that I thought was next. My apologies. Which is a reference from Corporate Performance and Resources Scrutiny Committee. It is, as I said, a reference from the Cabinet on the 22nd. It related to the Cabinet proposals. It was the initial capital, and at that stage we still were unsure about issues. There was a comment referred to by Councillor in referred to the Welsh Education Strategic Plan in relation to the capital programme, and related, and we can confirm that the Welsh medium schools were considered. as part of the programming, because there was a question whether or not they were, and indeed they were. And I know that the Deputy Leader and Cabinet Member for Education, Liz, was to assure the Council that there was a wide range of considerations for the transition from the 21st century schools to WESP, just the Welsh in Education Strategic Plan, and indeed confirmed that the Vale had been ahead in the game regarding the building of the schools as part of the 21st century schools. There was an issue also raised in relation to the importance of prioritising capital bids within the area of neighbourhood services, waste and highways maintenance, and also there was an issue in relation to a highway issue in terms of a wall that was possibly causing safety to drivers and pedestrians, which I think has now been taken up already. And I know that the Chair mentioned that it would be necessary to profile certain capital schemes, and indeed that's what we will do and what we are doing in order to make some savings. But obviously one of the examples that they wanted to make sure was tantamount in our minds was road surfacing and waste management, and I can give assurance it is. So basically the committee supported the emphasis placed on those prioritisation bids, on those two in particular, although we have also taken in consideration the wall on the highway in Boverton. So at this stage I think that we can give the assurances that they will be considered, and that we currently note the position, and that the budget working group will be considering those things in the round of the budget process. So I don't know if anybody wants to make any comments, any further comments. Liz, I think you got your hand up.
Yes, in sort of seconding the recommendations, I was hoping that there would be an opportunity at some point today to mention 21st century schools, and I'm
no, it is.
that it was mentioned. And as you would be aware, I am virtually sitting in the refectory or the cafeteria area of the brand new Pencoitra High School. It is absolutely stunning. It is a joy, and I'm sure I speak for all of us in hoping that all the children there feel as proud of it as we are, and that we would like to say to them that it may have cost 30 odd million, but they are worth every single penny.
Indeed, I'd echo that. But not only in that school, but in the others that we've redeveloped too. Good. Okay. And just an assurance to Councillor Johnson, who I know is with us, is that the WESP has been considered within all of this. And we're still looking at the issues and the requirements. And indeed, that's one of the reasons why we're pushing, as we have done recently, for the waterfront school to be started at long last. Hopefully it will do in the coming days or weeks, or hopefully weeks, rather than anything else. So we just need reassurance from the developers that that is still going on, and they are going to comply with their promises, let's put it that way. I think it needs saying. Okay. Yes, everybody happy with that? So we're happy to note, but obviously give the assurances that all those considerations will be considered by the budget working group. The next item is item 9, which is again from corporate performance, and it's in relation to the initial revenue budget proposals and the medium-term financial plan. As you know, it came to Cabinet in November. It was the initial one, and we didn't have much of the information, but we also had to give some initial estimates. Again, there was raised the importance to fund the cost pressures relating to the statutory service, such as waste and highways maintenance. Again, issues that was raised in the capital report, and indeed that's true. It was also raised that we need to make sure that the inclusion of free school meals provision and the need to be adequately funded. And indeed, I would echo that, but I do know that the Welsh Government have said that in terms of primary schools, they will be phasing that in over the coming year, so that all primary schools will have, school children, I should say, will have free school meals should they require it, or if they want it or not. And there was obviously, we needed more information in relation to the Intermediate Care Fund, or ICF, and again, that was something which we still have some comments about, but still not finalised. They're part of the budget working process. So we still in fact do need to clarify. We have had some information from Welsh Government, but again, that'll be all part of the budget process, and the budget working group will be looking at that. The chair also raised a number of issues concerning the impact of the funding and the cost implications of public sector pension schemes, and the importance of maintaining healthy reserves was issued, and indeed the need to possibly reprofile them if necessary. And again, that's something which we are still considering. Also talked about the upward direction of travel of the Consumer Retail Price Index on cost pressures. And if you recall, when we did this initially, I think CPI was either CPI 3.1 or 3.2 or 3.2, I believe it was, and it's currently now at 5.4%. So indeed, it is escalating, and it seems as if it may get to 7%, which is not good news, and therefore inflation is going to have a marked effect not on anything we do, but obviously in terms of anything we want to build. So we have to really keep an eye on that. But the other thing that was quite interesting was the chair made the comment that she stressed that other scrutiny committees need to highlight both priority areas of funding and those which could be reprioritised, and therefore where savings could be made. And indeed, that's something which doesn't always happen at this time of the year, but it is something that we need to consider. There was a comment obviously made about the point that we had it at 10.6 or thereabouts increase as part of the Welsh Government settlement, and whether or not that could be passed on to taxpayers to lower the rate of council tax being set. Now, I'm not sure I would concur with that, on the basis that if we have nearly £30 million worth of cost pressures, which went to all the scrutiny committees, and I can't remember any scrutiny committee saying, oh, we don't need to do that, we don't need to do that. I think, in fact, they all said we need to do all of them. So if we're going to do that within our current funding envelope, then clearly we have to look at council tax levels in a realistic manner. So basically, I think I've covered most of the issues. There were comments made from there. Clearly, they supported, again, highway maintenance and waste management. But otherwise, I think we should note the report and allow the budget working group to take those things into consideration. And if anybody's got any comments in relation to that. No.
Only to second, Leader.
Thank you very much. The next item is item 10, which is initial housing revenue account, again from corporate performance and resources. It was noted that there was a change in the increase in bad debt and doubtful debt provision, and that amount had reduced, and that the capital expenditure was funded, therefore would be funded from revenue about the area there. And there was a recalculation, if you recall, we did make this point, was that there's recalculation of £18 million, which is an increase of £12 million. And that basically was because of the fact that we couldn't carry out the capital spend that we would, and therefore we didn't need to borrow as much as we could. So in other words, we intended to. So the housing revenue account went up, but that will be addressed during the budget process. In terms of rent levels, that wasn't then known, and in fact we're currently working on that. So that will be coming to a cabinet later when we look at the final budgets. Councillor Johnson, who was with us, also asked about the capital expenditure refund on the revenue account, the CERA, and their contributions. And again, as I said, that was down to the fact that we didn't spend as much as we should have done. There was a question concerning bad debt provision, and indeed the answer given to that was that the council will be looking to reduce it from 6% to 3% if the bad debt is not continuing, and clearly we'll need to review that before we make that final decision. But in essence, the cabinet's proposals were noted, and clearly the corporate performance said that they wanted to have an update in relation to the CERA implications, the capital expenditure funded from the revenue account, and that's only fair and proper. And indeed, I hope that we'll also get at that in our final report when we're looking to set the budget. So, can I finally move that we note the comments and again leave the issues to the budget working group to consider? So agreed.
And formally seconded, Leader. Yeah.
Thank you very much. The next item is the minutes of the corporate parenting panel, of which I know Councillor Ben Gray and Councillor Eddie Williams are both of you are members. I've had a quick look at them, and I don't think either of you wish to make any comments in relation to the minutes that are before us to be noted or comment upon.
Just to say, corporate parenting panel continues to be a very interesting group to oversee all of the areas of the council that are involved with our children looked after, and also those referring and looking at those on the edge of care as well. This particular meeting had a bit of an educational twist on it. It was looking at the key stage 4 and also IDITE and the work there with young people, and it was a really engaging session, as well as reporting on our latest quarterly returns on reduction expectations around children looked after. So really positive meeting, and don't think there's anything particularly to note other than obviously to pass on our thanks to everyone who's working with our children looked after population, all that they're doing, which is obviously noted by a corporate parenting panel and is here for us to see the work in that area. So I'd move we note those minutes.
Okay, thank you very much. In that case, I will formally second, unless Eddie wishes to. But otherwise, thank you for that. We'll note the comments, the contents of that report. I will move on to the next item, which is item 12, which is the annual delivery plan monitoring report for Q2. So this is one of the proper reports that we have. It's something we have on a regular basis. The performance reports present our progress at Q2, which is April to September 2021, and that's towards achieving our annual delivery plan commitments and obviously aligning with our corporate plan well-being objectives. We have made positive progress despite the pandemic, and the plan has an overall green status for the plan for Q2. I'm pleased to say that all 4 plan well-being objectives were attributed green performance too. Therefore, it is positive that we're ongoing challenges are being dealt with, which have been arising from the pandemic. 95% of the planned activities have been attributed green performance, which is very good. 2% amber and 3% a red status. Of the 12 actions which were red, 25% were directly results from the service reprioritization in response to the pandemic, but where appropriate, that work is now recommenced. Of the 42 corporate wellbeing objectives, data was reported for 36, where 36 measures where the performance status was applicable. 61% of those were green, 6% amber, 33% were red. Data was unavailable for 6 quarterly measures due to the fact that they were reprioritization measures, and some of the performance stats were not applicable as they were now being established as a baseline. In relation to the 12 measures attributable red, the impact of COVID has contributed to 50% to 58% of those. There are obviously remedial actions being put into place to identify any underperformance, but I'm pleased to say that all 5 scrutiny committees have looked at these performances, and they have noted the results of the progress to date. Therefore, what I'm asking is for Cabinet to consider the views of the scrutiny committees, which they've simply noted, and also that the Cabinet is requested to note the overall service results to date and to progress towards achieving the priorities of an annual plan 2021 in relation to the coronavirus. So there are 3 recommendations, and I won't read them out, it's pointless, but basically what it does is Cabinet notes and endorses the recommendations of the scrutiny committees. They also we've considered the results of the annual delivery plan, and finally that we note the progress and endorse the action taken to progress anything being made to recover from the strategy in the response to the ongoing pandemic. So basically, we've considered it. We've noted the recommendations of Scrutiny Committee, and indeed we endorse what has happened so far, and we note the ongoing progress. If anybody's going to make any comments in relation to their own areas, but it is quite positive, and it is only for Q2 at this stage. The appendix in itself does outline the performance period. It does talk about different areas. Section 1 talks about the overall RAG performance, and this is in Appendix A. Section 2 to 6 talks about provides the overview for each of the 4 corporate wellbeing objectives, and Section 6 provides a link to 5 presentations covering all scrutiny committees. So I think everything has been done in terms of that. In terms of the report itself, from paragraph 210 onwards, it talks about the performance from each of the scrutiny committees, which is, as I said, were all noted. So I don't know if everybody's got any comments, but I think it's positive progress despite all the setbacks of pandemic, etc. Liz, would you like to come in, please?
Thank you, Leader. I think, as you mentioned, that this goes up to the end of September, and obviously we'll be hearing about all the progress that's happened since, and there is quite a lot of progress. And in the report, it talked about the launch of the food pod in Penarth. And just to update you, since then, there's actually been the installation of a purpose-built food pod. And with the support of additional volunteers, it will now go to 3 days a week opening, or 3 sessions a week opening from this week. So noticing that there are that working people are finding life difficult at the moment, we will be opening from 3:30 to 5:30 on a Wednesday as well. So I just wanted to update Cabinet on, many of these things are already well developed past what we're hearing about, but the discussions within the various scrutiny committees were very detailed and comprehensive, and worth looking back on for anybody that's interested. And very happy to second the recommendations.
Thank you very much. If there's no others, then I will move on to agenda item 13, which is the draft participation strategy, and this is to see Cabinet's endorsement of the draft public participation strategy for public consultation. It actually we are required to publish a public participation strategy by May 2022. In fact, it's before the 5th of May, because this is related to the new Local Government and Election Wales Act of 2021. So it becomes enacted there, therefore we need to publish it before that date. And there's one correction I would like to make in terms of the report, and that is on paragraph 1.6. And it says the Council must publish the participation strategy by June 2022. In fact, it should be May 2022, and to be specific, before the 5th of May 2022, which is the reason why we will be looking to publish it before that date. But basically, we are committed as a council, as everyone in this virtual meeting knows, it's committed to engaging residents and other stakeholders in decision making. Working with our communities is one of the 4 objectives set out in the corporate plan. And part 3 of the Local Government Election Wales Act focuses on that, and it established a duty to encourage local people to participate in decision making, and requires that the local authorities publish, consult on, and regularly review the public participation strategy. The Act stipulates the strategy must, and I will read them out, promote awareness of council functions, promote awareness of how to become a councillor, facilitate access to decisions made or to be made, and promote and facilitate processes for local people to make representations to the council about a decision. So in order to do that and ensure the council meets the requirements of the Act, the draft strategy has been produced, and this report basically seeks endorsement of the draft strategy in order to begin a period of public and key stakeholder consultation. The recommendations are that the Cabinet considers and approves the Public Promotion Strategy 2022, which is accompanied at Appendix A to the report, as the basis for consultation as described in the report. The two, that the Cabinet approves the consultation approach and timetable as set out in this report, that the Cabinet refers this report and appendices to Corporate Performance and Resources Scrutiny Committee as part of this the programme of consultation, and that the Cabinet receives a further report setting out the results of the consultation, a draft final version of the strategy and the accompanying action plan in due course. As I said, I've already given you the background. I've already said that we need to publish it before the 5th of May. 2.3 gives the definition of public participation, which I won't read out. As I said, it does go into some important areas of how it will go forward. There is a draft strategy proposed of a series of actions that will enable the Council to build upon its current approach, and these are being framed in line with the Council's 4 organisational values of openness, ambitious, togetherness, and to be proud. For these are referenced, in addition, these are going to be contained in the strategy, and they're also contained in the action plan Appendix B. So, in other words, in order to comply with the requirements of 39, we need to make arrangements to consult. And in paragraph 2.9, the consultation process is listed there, gives you the timetable, and as I said, the final act would be that on the 29th of April, we would finally publish the participation strategy, and it would be published, and it was obviously to be done ahead of the notice of election. We're doing this in some respects to take it to consultation. It will come back to Cabinet on the 14th of March. It will be referred to Corporate Performance on the 17th of March before PERDA starts on the 21st of March. But clearly, once we've done that, we need to publish it on the 29th. So it is what it is. It's covered within Appendix A and B within the report. It's a timetable, and I so move the recommendations that I read out earlier. Peter, do you want to come in, please?
If I may, please, Chair and Leader, is it possible for us to adapt the one recommendation to include the Environment and Regeneration Scrutiny Committee in that consultation?
Indeed.
As the very next, well, not next, but the penultimate, the item 15. There is a recommendation from that scrutiny committee, and it is actually challenging us to think about consultation. I think it would be excellent if this report was referred to them. And as far as I can see, unless I'm wrong, they are due to meet on, I think, the 15th of February and the 15th of March. So there would be time to include.
Absolutely. No, that's fine. That's fine. I haven't got a problem with that at all. Yeah, that sounds perfect. To be honest, I'm happy for it to go to any committee, but it's going to Corporate Performance because that's the lead committee. But as you say, if we have a reference which is an urgent item under item 15.1, which is a reference from that committee, and it talks about active travel and the results of the consultation. Yeah, I have no problem with that, Peter. I think that's a good idea. Anybody else got any comments? So we will amend the report so that it is changed from June 2022, because that is incorrect. It has to be done before, it comes into force on the 5th, so it needs to be published before that date, so we're ahead of the game. Yeah, so agreed?
Yeah, and formally seconded.
Thank you very much, and we'll add in the Environmental and Regeneration Scrutiny Committee. The next item is item 14, and this is a report an update on the statutory consultation held by St Nicholas Church in Wales School. I think Liz, Cabinet Member for Education and Regeneration, is taking this one.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, this is fairly straightforward. There's a statutory consultation is being run by the council on behalf of the governing body of St Nicholas Church in Wales Primary School, for that simple reason that it is a Church in Wales primary school, so the consultation is theirs. The proposal, in effect, is to the consultation is to alter the lowest age from 4 to 3 to allow for the inclusion of 24 nursery places within the school. And by doing so, by including nursery education, it would develop continuity and progression in children's learning from the age of 3. The background to it is laid out from paragraph 1 onwards, but I think paragraph 1.6 to 1.8 talks about the 3 options that were looked at in terms of relocation, relocating the school. Well, while it mentions there that would have a significant impact on the cost of delivering the scheme, which I'm not sure that we could manage. The option to reduce the capacity, going into relocation, it's the cost. But actually, for me, the more important thing is the school wanted to stay where it is. It is a Church in Wales school, and they felt that their connection to the church was very, very important. So, we've got that. There was the option to reduce capacity to allow that, because that would allow the highways infrastructure to be managed, etc., to get over some of the issues. And there was also a discussion about, well, could you refurbish the existing school? And there are schools in the Vale of a certain age, built in the sort of 60s, 70s, that it's very difficult to refurbish them. They're not really up to scratch, and in some ways, if we're going into sort of carbon zero territory these days, it would be very, very difficult to retrofit them and also to fit in the a nursery, etc. So those were the reasons in discussing with the school themselves. And so, as I said, we are running the consultation on their behalf. If there are any objections, obviously this would come back to us as an objection report, and in terms of the sort of next steps, that if the governing body wish to proceed, even in light of those of any objections, we would need to decide whether, or the cabinet, because looking at the timescales, that would likely not be us. The local authority would need to decide whether to approve, reject, or approve with modifications the proposal. So that's just sort of looking at next steps in our relationship with the proposal. So we've got 3 recommendations today. That firstly, that Cabinet considers this report and is aware of the statutory consultation process for St Nicholas Church in Wales Primary School. The Cabinet notes the implementation of the proposal, that the implementation of the proposal would be subject to relevant statutory processes, and notes that Welsh Government capital funding would be subject to approval of a rigorous business case. So again, we would be submitting that to Welsh Government. And that, as I said, the Cabinet notes the implications for the local authority where the governing body receives objections during the statutory notice period, and wishes to proceed with the proposal. The local authority would need to decide whether to approve, reject, or approve with modifications that proposal. And I'd so move.
Okay, Ben.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I wish to formally second the proposal. I think that it's welcomed that we're moving forwards with this. after previous iterations weren't able to move forward. And I think that actually this school needs to be, replaced. It's clearly a building which is not fit for purpose, and I think I obviously wait to see the outcome of the consultation. Noting your points, Liz, maybe not within this chair that I'll be looking at them, but I think it will be. It's really important that this moves forward and Nicholas gets a primary school that's fit for purpose. And these are part-time nursery places that we're talking about, and I think it fits in with the school ethos in other parts of the Vale as well, with the way we've done schools. So I'm very happy discussing it, and we'll wait and see what the outcome is from this consultation.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we need to move on in terms of this particular school, and the addition of a nursery is I think an obvious need. But the point is, if we rebuild this, then that also addresses the highway infrastructure issues of people dropping off and things within the village, which did cause some of the issues that we've seen in the past and the objections that we've seen in the past. So yeah, I'm happy as well to continue, and we'll see what develops in terms of the schools consultation, because it is in fact a schools consultation in relation to its future. Yeah. In that case, we're all happy with that. Good, thank you. Next item is item 15. Any items I have that are urgent, and as I mentioned earlier on, I do have one. It was a reference, as Peter mentioned, from Environment and Regeneration Scrutiny Committee on the 18th of January. It was in conjunction with the active travel and the results of the consultation for the active travel network map update. It was brought to Cabinet on the 20th of December to inform the results of the public consultation, and maps were submitted to Welsh Government for approval, and the 12-week public consultation period took place between August and October, and from which we had 143 responses. As part of the consultation, the committee provided a number of viewpoints. The group manager advised, following the public consultation, there had been 3 amendments made to the map, mostly the addition of a route down to Ladwick Major Beach East. Aberthaw had now been included, and Dingle Park in Penarth had been added. Only the routes on these maps would be eligible for funding for Welsh Government, and obviously Welsh Government have given positive feedback during the consideration, but we have submitted them within the deadline, which was December, but there was a caveat that this would be taken and be considered by Scrutiny Committee, and any addendums could be sent off for final sign-off. There was some consideration, and I know there was progress and suggestion on the active travel route between Dinas Powys and Barry. There was also engagement with schools and a message going out via email to parents, in other words, as part of the consultation process, which is a fair point, I think. There were some concerns raised by residents in the marina. Maybe it's down to the success of the 2 cycle routes or the number of people using them, but clearly the COVID-19 had an impact on that too. But we did erect signs asking for cyclists to dismount and where they shouldn't be travelling, and that was to be respectful to pedestrians. I know Councillor John commented the support for the active travel route between Wolverton and St Athan, which indeed isn't in this plan at the moment, which could possibly be in the future if funding was made available. So basically what they said to us is they asked the Cabinet to consider the comments of the Scrutiny Committee, and they're asking for further consideration to be given around how consultation exercises are conducted to attract more views from members. And one of the things they talked about was using schools, using Wales Tourist Board, etc. And in fact, this fits in very nicely, as Peter said, with the report that we recently had. And obviously, the future consideration be given to the active travel route between Wolverton and St Athan, but that wouldn't form part of this particular process. And obviously, the highlight the scrutiny's and public support for the route between Dinas Powys and Barry, which is part of the current plans. So basically, I think they haven't made any addendums as such to the report itself, but made some positive comments in terms of the consultation, and again, in relation to what has already been said. Peter, do you want to come in at this stage, please?
Yes, if I may, Leader. I think it was interesting that during the course of the scrutiny, a number of things came out that were perhaps not so clearly reported because a key piece of work was being driven by the city region. And because that was spearheaded by Cardiff rather than the Vale, not all councillors needed to be aware. But what the scrutiny committee was told was that that there is a project to look at various routes between Newport and Barry, which would embrace the journey between Dinas and Barry. And that would be subject to a subsequent report, which would go to the scrutiny. So I think that was addressed. You answered, or you and your colleagues answered the first recommendation by including them in the other piece of work, and therefore the three recommendations that they have made, I think, are either substantially addressed or will be addressed. So I'm very happy to move them right now. Thank you.
Thank you, and I think we can endorse them. I think because they're all positive comments that it would have made, which I think would be sensible going forward. So are we happy to do that, and that there's no changes to be sent to Welsh Government from this? So that's finalised too. Okay, good. I don't have anything else under part 1, and I don't have anything under part 2. So can I thank you? This will be the end of the meeting. Can I thank you for your forbearance and thank you for your time today? And we'll close the meeting now and wait for the recording to stop and the live streaming to stop too. So thank you for your forbearance.